Welcome back. All right, so yesterday, Daryl Sutter was asked about being nominated for the Jack Adams Award, and he kind of went, "Meh." And there was like this whole media thing, like, well, Daryl Sutter went about being nominated for the Jack Adams. There's a reason. So if we look at the Jack Adams, it starts in 1974. It runs until 2021, of course. And we don't know the 2022 winner yet, but does it really matter? So when we look at the coaches that have had this award, there are two that are currently still coaching their teams. Bruce Cassidy, who was awarded the award in 2020, and Rod Brindamore, who was awarded it in 2021. Now, Brindamore is, I think, 100% safe. Wouldn't matter what happens with Carolina from here, he's safe. Bruce Cassidy, not so sure. Cam Neely's got some Bruins fans wondering if that means that Cassidy might not be coming back. So we'll start over here in 74. And I wore Flyers because with the Flyers, you got one, two, three, four different coaches for the Flyers who've won the award. And so I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can. Got two boards up here. It's the first time in a video I've ever had two boards on at the exact same time. Other than I think the draft, and that would have been, that probably would have been the last time, like a draft video. All right, so 1974, the award starts off with a bang. Fred Shero, they win the Stanley Cup in 1974, do those Flyers with Bobby Clarke on the team and all that. So Shero was there until 1978 when he controversially decided he was going to the New York Rangers. That had to hurt, and obviously the Rangers didn't have like a Stanley Cup with Shero at the helm, but that was a tough one, right? Now, 1975, Bob Pulford wins it. Now, the LA Kings lost in the preliminary round that year, and in 1977, due to a feud with the owner, he's out. So that's 2 years. So you got 4 years with Shero, 2 years with Pulford. 1976, it's Don Cherry with the Boston Bruins. And they lost in the semifinals that year, and in 1979, he is out. A lot of fighting with management for Don Cherry, that'll surprise people. And yeah, he was out. And of course, then he go to the Colorado Rockies, where he did not win a Jack Adams. 1977, Scotty Bowman, one of only two times Bowman is on the board, which shows that it's just criminal. He was the Cup winner in 1977 with the Montreal Canadiens, or just an amazing year that year for Montreal. And he left in 1979 because he wanted the general manager job, and they passed him over. If they give him the general manager job and he sticks around, do the Montreal Canadiens win a cup before 1986? It's possible. Do you avoid alienating Guy Lafleur and having him retire before coming back to play for the Rangers in Quebec after? Maybe. So there's a lot of maybes out there, right? 1978, Bobby Crom, coach of the Detroit Red Wings, wins it. Now, they lost in the quarterfinals that year, so they got through the preliminary round, and then he's fired in 1980. So 2 years later, he is out. 1979, Al Arbour wins it. This is a year before the New York Islanders would win the Stanley Cup, thus the 1980 there. They lost in the semifinals that year, and coming out of that year, there was a lot of discussion whether or not the New York Islanders were built to win a Stanley Cup. They were. He retired in 1986. He would come back in 1988, but he never had that magic again of the four cups in a row, obviously. But Arbour, one of the better coaches. 1980, Pat Quinn. Pat Quinn would win this again with a different team, of course, later on, but they lost the Stanley Cup final in 1980 against the New York Islanders, and he's fired in 1982. The Flyers, not a lot of patience with coaches. 1981, Red Berenson leads the St. Louis Blues, and they lost in the quarterfinals, but they had quite the season, and then he's fired a year later. So the award didn't save him from being fired. 1982, Tom Watt wins the award with the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets had a good record that year. They lose in the division semifinals, which is the first round. He's fired in 1984, so 2 years later he's out. 1983, Orville Tessier is the winner for the Chicago Blackhawks. They lost in the conference final that year, and he was fired in 1985, so 2 years later he was out. 1984, Brian Murray. They lost the division finals that year, the Washington Capitals did, and he was fired in 1990. He was there for a nice long period of time. That, I think, is the longest one to this point of the period of time between winning the Jack Adams and being fired. I think Murray, that's the longest so far. 1985, it is Mike Keenan, who loses in the final that year. He also wins Coach of the Year. He would leave in 1988 to go to the Chicago Blackhawks. And he had some success with Chicago, and then he had some success in the Stanley Cup with with New York Rangers, and he went around the league a bit. Never did coach Montreal. 1986, Glenn Sather. Oddly enough, this is the year they don't win the Stanley Cup. Those Oilers. They lost in the division semifinals or division finals that year, which is the second round. He would step down in 1988 after winning a fourth Stanley Cup to become the general manager. And that was at the time considered just crazy. People were surprised, myself included, that he would step aside as coach after so much success. 1987, Jacques Demers wins it, lost in the conference final that year with Detroit, and he won it again a year later, 1988. He lost in the conference finals again, and then he was out in 1990. So back-to-back wins as coach of the year, only bought him 2 years after that second win, and then he's out. 1989, it's Pat Burns. He lost in the final in 1989. Pat Burns was probably, I mean, if I'm talking about coaches, my favorites, Pat Quinn would be up there, but Pat Burns, absolutely so animated behind the bench. Absolutely great stuff with Pat Burns every time. And he resigned in 1992 with Montreal due to media coverage. He wasn't happy with the media. Then he went to Toronto. And again, at the time, I remember thinking, I don't know that the Toronto media is going to make you feel better than Montreal's. But anyways, 1990, Bob Murdoch, Winnipeg Jets again. Good year for Winnipeg, and their coach wins Coach of the Year. They lost in the first round, the division semifinals. He's fired a year later. So both Tom Watt and Bob Murdoch fired pretty darn quickly after they won it. 1991, Brian Sutter. He wins the award for St. Louis. They lost in the division finals. He left the team in 1992. 1992, Pat Quinn. He is coach of the year for the Vancouver Canucks. They lost the division finals, which is the second round that year. And he stepped down in 1994 after that run to the Stanley Cup final. And I remember he put Rick Lee in charge. And I don't know how many Canuck fans were going, pardon? But it just seemed like there was a lot of that. So Pat Quinn at that point wanted to just be a general manager. He didn't want to do both. But doing both jobs is very, very difficult. And I don't think that it's something that we'll see again in the NHL. Other than on an interim basis, I don't think we'll see a general manager who's also the coach at the same time. It just is too much work. 1993, Pat Burns, 4 years after being coach of the year for Montreal, as coach of the year in Toronto. They made it to the conference final that year. That was a pretty big year for them, and then they lost against LA. And then the following year, they go to the conference final again and lost to Vancouver. But he was fired in 1996. So back-to-back conference finals didn't stop him from getting fired in 96. 1994, Jacques Lemaire. He would win the Stanley Cup in 95, didn't win it in 94. They lost in the conference finals. That was the year that famously Marc Messier made the guarantee that they would win, and then they did. He resigned in 1998. He stepped down after they lost in the first round in 98. Mark Crawford for the Quebec Nordiques. I'm not being facetious. It's not supposed to be the Avs. It is the Quebec Nordiques. It was their last year. Mark Crawford lost the conference quarterfinal, which is the first round. But man, Quebec was so stacked. He would resign from the Colorado Avalanche in 1998. So not fired, resigned. So there are some resigns on here. But again, that's 3 years after, and he won a Stanley Cup in between. So got it done fast. 1996, Scotty Bowman wins his second, and it's almost 20 years after the 1977. They lost in the conference final that year. That was a great year for Detroit. He would retire in 2002, but they won the Cup in 97. They won the Cup in 98. They won the Cup in 02. Bowman, lots of rings on that guy's hands. Just so many Stanley Cups for Scotty Bowman. I think it's hard to argue he's not the best coach we've ever seen. And people will say, well, he had stacked teams. I can say with that Detroit team that before he came in as coach, it just was not working, and his coaching style made it all work. 1997, Ted Nolan, one of the more controversial names on either board, Ted Nolan. He won Coach of the Year. Hasek didn't like him. Hasek didn't want him to come back. And Darcy Regier takes over, and Regier decides to really offer him a cheap contract, offered him $500,000. And Ted Nolan, who'd won Coach of the Year, felt that was insulting. So he parted ways with the team. He just didn't agree with that contract offer, and he turned it down. And so they went another direction. 1998, Pat Burns wins it again. Third different team, wins it with Boston. They lost in the conference quarterfinals. That's the first round. And he was fired by Boston in 2001. So Burns made his way around what is now the Atlantic Division, going from Montreal, Toronto, Boston, and then of course he'd hit the Metro, what is now the Metro. He'd coached for New Jersey as well, where he didn't actually win Coach of the Year. 1999, Jacques Martin ends up winning it. Lost in the conference quarterfinals, and he was fired in 2004 by the Ottawa Senators. But Ottawa in '99, I mean, they were a wagon, and then it just sort of from there. Yeah, in '04, I understood why they fired him. But again, you're hired to be fired, right? 2000, Joel Quenneville for the St. Louis Blues. So the Blues, with their second entry, they have a third entry over here as well. They lost the conference quarterfinals, so the first round. That St. Louis team was stacked. You go back and look at the 99-2000 St. Louis Blues. That team was fantastic and just, couldn't get out of that first round. He was fired by St. Louis in 2004. Now let us switch over to this board. And again, this shows the size of the set now is a lot bigger. I could not have done this in the other house. 2001, Bill Barber, coach for the Philadelphia Flyers. They lost the conference quarterfinal that year, and he's fired in 2002. And Bobby Clark didn't mince any words, saying that the veterans had lost faith in him. And there was Flyers team players saying that's on the coach. That's why we lost. So he was out. 2002, Bobby Francis of the Arizona Coyotes wins this award. So we've got 2 for the Coyotes and 2 for the Jets. I could have worn a Jets or a Coyotes for this. I opted for Flyers, just because technically it's 4 for the Flyers, 2 for the Coyotes, 2 for the Jets. But Bobby Francis, they lost in the conference quarterfinals that year, and he's fired in 2004. And again, with Arizona, as with when they were in Winnipeg, a lot of it is this is a team that's overachieved. People didn't expect it, and so the coach gets a lot of credit for that, which is very often how this award works. 2003, Jacques Lemaire ends up winning it for the second time. They lost in the conference finals, did Minnesota that year. He stepped down in 2009. And it was an odd way that he went. There was calls for him to be fired before that, and a statement basically that he wasn't good at coaching the offensive side of the game. He could coach the defensive side, but not the offensive side of the game. So 2004, we get your final cup winner on the board. So you've got a cup winner here with Fred Shero. You've got a cup winner with, it's in here. There's another one that won the Stanley Cup, Scotty Bowman in 1977. And John Tortorella in 2004. Those are the 3 coaches who have won the Stanley Cup the year that they got Coach of the Year. So Tortorella did win it. He was fired in 2008 by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Keep in mind that there's the 04-05 season that didn't happen. So it only takes 3 actual seasons before he was fired. Lindy Ruff, Coach of the Year in 2006. Somewhere New Jersey fans went, pardon? But yeah, he lost the conference final that year. He was fired in 2013. He was in Buffalo for so long. I was honestly kind of surprised when they fired him. Alain Vigneault wins the award for Vancouver in 2007. They lost the conference semifinal that year because that's how they roll. And he was fired in 2013. By the time he was fired, I understood them firing him. I thought Vigneault was a good coach, but I understood they needed a different voice behind the bench. And then, careful what you wish for, because things get kind of rocky from there for Vancouver. 2008, Bruce Boudreau, who of course now is in Vancouver, was in Washington at the time. They lost the conference quarterfinals, so the first round. And that was a tremendous Washington team, very talented. He was fired in 2011 after some playoff setbacks. Playoff setbacks caused Boudreau's time in Washington not to be that long. Claude Julien wins it in 2009 for Boston. He would win the Stanley Cup with Boston in 2011. They lost the conference semifinal, so second round, that year. And he was fired in 2017. And by the time he was fired, I didn't know a Boston fan that necessarily wanted to keep him. But he would be hired then by Montreal. Julien was able to find jobs after being fired. I think we'll probably see Claude Julien in the NHL again at some point. I get the feeling that could happen. Dave Tippett, 2010, he wins it with the Arizona Coyotes. Again, it's this team wasn't expected to be here kind of thing. They're in the playoffs, and all right, Coach of the Year. They lost the conference quarterfinal, so again, they lost in the first round. So both Arizona teams, when their coach wins Coach of the Year, they're out in the first round. Division semifinals here, but yeah, Winnipeg Jets, same thing, lost in the first round. So if Coach of the Year is from that organization, they lost in the first round that year. Dave Tippett left the team in 2017. Dan Bylsma for Pittsburgh, 2011. Lost the conference quarterfinal that year, and then he was fired in 2014. And there's a lot of discussions about him being fired and whether or not he was a really good coach. And his experience since then, I don't think is really necessarily cleared up whether or not Bilesma should be a head coach in the NHL. He's another one too that I wouldn't be surprised if he wants another job. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get one at some point. 2012, Ken Hitchcock won the award. They lost the conference semifinal, so that's your second round. And he's fired in 2017. So he lasted 5 years after he won the award, which compared to most, that's not bad. That's not bad. Although Julian, it was 8 years. Tippett walked away in 7. But yeah, Boudreau, it's 3. Vigneault, it's 6. Ruff, it's 7. Tortorella, it's 4. Like I said, more like 3 because there's a year taken out. Lemaire, again, 5 because there's a year taken out. Francis was gone in 2 years, and Barber was gone in 1. So yeah, Hitchcock, fired in 2017. Paul McLean, one of the best interviews I've ever seen when it comes to coaches. 2013, he wins it for Ottawa, but they lost in the second round that year, the conference semifinal. He was fired in 2014, which was a surprise to me that he was fired as quickly as he was after winning Coach of the Year. 2014, it's Patrick Roy who wins it for the Colorado Avalanche. He lost in the first round, and he resigned from the job in 2016. And we haven't seen him back at the NHL level. There's always rumors anytime Montreal's looking for a coach or a GM or anything, Patrick Roy's name will come up. But yeah, he resigns in 2016. 2015, Bob Hartley won it for the Calgary Flames. A favorite of Tortorella's, as I remember it. Couldn't wait to get in the locker room and congratulate him on a win. Lost in the second round, did those Calgary Flames that year, and he was fired in 2016. So he's fired a year later. It was actually less than a calendar year between him winning the award and being fired by Calgary. So I would imagine he'd hold up and go, look, I won Coach of the Year last year. And like, it doesn't matter. Then we have Barry Trotz in 2016. He lost in the second round with the Capitals that year. They won the Stanley Cup in 2018, and he left the team in 2018. Well, now he's available. So, I mean, Washington's pretty secure at coach, but sure, why not? Actually, Trotz has been interviewed for a bunch of jobs. I expect him to get one soon. So we'll see where he ends up. But 2017, John Tortorella wins his second Coach of the Year award. And again, it's the Columbus, nothing was expected of them. And he got them into the playoffs. They did lose in the first round. And he departed the team in 2021. It was one of those, I'm leaving, they're not renewing your contract. So he's not technically fired. So it's one of those, kind of, sort of. If he'd wanted to come back, I don't think Columbus would have brought him back, but they just both agreed not to renew his contract. It's a lot like a firing. If you're not at the job anymore, you're not employed anymore, it seems kind of like a firing. 2018, Gerard Gallant wins it for Vegas. Famously, fantastic expansion year. I cannot argue against Gallant being Coach of the Year that year. I can't with a straight face. They lost in the Stanley Cup final. He was fired in 2020, replaced by Pete DeBoer, who has now been fired by the Vegas Golden Knights. So Vegas, going into their 6th year, will be looking at their third coach behind the bench. And Gallant, of course, right now with the Rangers, they're in the second round against the Carolina Hurricanes. 2019, Barry Trotz. Again, the Islanders were not expected to be this good. They lost in the second round that year. He was fired, of course, a month ago now? Weeks ago? Anyways, yeah, Barry Trotz fired in 2022. Again, Coach of the Year didn't help him hold on. Neither did the fact that he was Coach of the Year twice over a period of 4 years. And Trotz is an excellent coach. So, yeah. And then, as I said, Bruce Cassidy and Rod Brind'Amour are the two most recent additions to this board of woe. These boards of woe, as it were. So, Stanley Cup, 3. 3 coaches have won the Stanley Cup that have won Coach of the Year. 4 of them have reached the Stanley Cup final. The most recent being Gerard Gallant in 2018. Conference finals, 10 of them have lost in the conference finals. The most recent being 2006, that was Lindy Ruff. Round 2, 16. 16 lost in the second round. The most recent being Rod Brind'Amour in 2021. And if you want to see a coach lose in the first round, who was Coach of the Year, you can see that 14 times in the NHL's history, the most recent being 2017, when John Tortorella lost in the first round. So it does not necessarily mean playoff success. The one name that's not on this list, and one of the reasons that I've done this up is, of course, John Cooper in Tampa has never won the award, and yet they've won 2 straight Stanley Cups. They're currently up 2-0 on Florida, and there's not even a mention of him for Coach of the Year. And this is why when Daryl Sutter said it's not for best coach. This is why Daryl Sutter said it's not best coach. Notice Daryl Sutter never won the award. Won 2 Stanley Cups in LA. He's not on the board. The years he won the cup, it went to Hitchcock, who lost in the second round, and it went to Patrick Roy, who lost in the first round. So this is why, if a coach is asked about the Jack Adams Award being nominated, his response would be, because historically, it has not necessarily meant you keep your job very long, and it hasn't necessarily meant playoff success. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.